Good afternoon and welcome to our call to action. I believe our translators have had their lunch. Yes, thank you. Slightly smaller group of people than we anticipated, but hopefully some more people will come in here soon. We wanted to take a couple of minutes really quickly. One of the most important parts of our business before we get to our call of action, at least in the United States, is professional associations. And I belong to several, and I know that Michael J. does and Artur does as well, most of us do. And I wanted to just ask a couple of members of associations with whom I've worked very closely for many years to come up and provide a few words, just a couple of minutes, because one is the SIIA, the Software and Industry Information Association, and if you program software, which is most everybody these days, then you should belong to them, and the International Publishing Association, which is Jose Borghino, the Secretary General, who will speak after her. Danelle?
Thank you, Myron. I won't take much of your time, but I do want to kind of weave a little narrative around why the Software and Information Industry Association exists and what it does. Teresa and I were talking before lunch and trying to tap into our inner historians and determine how far after Gutenberg published his 100-some Bibles did the demand for printed literature become great enough that it was worth a publisher's time to get into that business and distribute books. We didn't quite figure it out. I learned that in the same century that Gutenberg invented his printing press, a educator, John Amos Komensky, a Czech, came up with the bright idea of illustrating the books he used with his students with pictures. So those two things happened close to the same period of time, but how long did it take for that critical literate mass to accumulate? So that made me think about something that Artur said last night at dinner, that he was a little impatient about waiting for the digital revolution to happen in education. And the Gutenberg Museum likes to say that Gutenberg started a media revolution, but it happened slowly. So you think I'm going to encourage you to be patient because these things happen slowly, but I'm not going to. I'm going to encourage you to be very impatient and be very careful. Schools should be impatient, educators should be impatient, government should be impatient, and certainly the developers are impatient. I say don't be patient, but be very careful. And now I'm talking to software developers primarily. It's a tricky world out there for getting into the education market. And that's why the education division of SIIA exists. We work with our members, our super members like Michael J. and Myron, some that aren't quite as heavily involved, but we like for them to be, to do three things primarily. We provide information about policy decisions that affect how school people, education people make decisions and about what kind of money they have to spend. In the States, that happens in 50 different ways because each state is slightly different. And we try to keep track of that so that our members are aware of where they might step in and save the day, or where they need to work a little harder to get around some regulations that seem a little nutty. We also provide information, and everybody needs information constantly because in our industry, many things change every day. Technical standards change every day. Sometimes it seems like what educators want changes every day. But I do encourage you to find out about those things, and the most efficient way for impatient people to find those things out is to join a network of like-minded people. I like to say that with SIIA, competitors become collaborators in our space, and it's very important. We do have members that are fierce collaborators, but they work together to share information and to teach each other. One way they do that with us is through special interest committees. Like I get to talk to Michael and Myron every month on the Tech Dev Committee call. Sometimes I have no idea what they're talking about, but I know they make progress. I know they support each other in helping find answers to those tricky questions around technological standards, etc. And our other committees do that as well, and in other interest areas. In addition to that kind of networking, we provide lots of market information, market intelligence. Where's the market going, do we think? What opportunities are out there because X did this to Y? What does it mean that company A merged with company B? How is that going to change our industry's landscape? And we help you get feedback from educators, learn about trends in teaching and learning. And finally, networking through, again, I mentioned the committees, 2 conferences a year. I'd love to talk to anyone who's interested about the one coming up in early December. And at these conferences, you build your network of partners, potential investors, potential allies, and find people who can help and support you. And one more thing, awards and recognition. We have the Cody Awards, the Academy Award of the software industry. And if you're a developer with a product that's out there in the market, I encourage you to see me after, and I will tell you how to apply. Thank you.
I do definitely want to mention the Cody Awards because they're a tremendous set of awards. Many of us have applied here in this room. Jose, a few words about the International Publishing Association. Oh, you could have just sat there, but I mean.
It's a different hat over here. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm a different person. How do I turn this on?
Actually, you use this one.
Yeah?
I'll fix this one.
Hi. I hope the translators can handle my Australian accent. I'll speak slowly, but I won't take up too much of your time. I'm the Secretary General of the International Publishers Association, and it's an organisation that was started in 1896. We have 69 members from 64 members from 59 countries. There are 5 new members joining at the General Assembly in Frankfurt Book Fair a week ago. So we're still growing. Interestingly, we cover nearly every large market in the world. We represent thousands of individual publishers through their associations, and we cover something like 5.5 billion people in the markets where we have members. Interestingly, we don't have a member in Poland. So if anybody from the Polish Publishers Association is out there, I'd love to speak to you afterwards. This is what we do. We work on the two main pillars of the IPA are copyright, the protection and promotion thereof, and freedom to publish. Copyright is central to everything we do. We're based in Geneva because the World Intellectual Property Organization, the only profit-making part of the UN, because of the rivers of gold from patents, is about 200 metres up the road from us. So we work very closely with them. At the moment, there's a huge debate happening in WIPO about the possible broadening of exceptions in the Copyright Act for education. You should be very worried. I know there's a lot of consternation in Europe about what's happening in Brussels. And rightly so. Our sister organisation, the Federation of European Publishers, the FEP, is working very heavily in Brussels, lobbying them. What we do is work globally and in Geneva. At the moment, the debate is a north-south divide. The north, or the developed countries, are trying to hold back on a treaty for broadening exceptions. The undeveloped or the developing countries of the south, the so-called south, are pushing for broader exceptions. We sometimes feel like we're the thin red line before disaster happens. So we'll keep you informed about that if you are members or if you do come from countries that are members of the IPA. There are 5 policy principles that we've come up with, and you'll be able to gauge how we deal with that later when I'm talking in this panel. Freedom to publish. The digital economy needs professional authors, editors and publishers, and public policy must respect creators' rights and provide a legal framework that supports the creative industry. Intelligent innovation. Publishers embrace the opportunities and disruption which digital brings, and they do it every day. Public policy must allow business models to evolve freely, including those that enable investment in content. 3, markets that respect creators' rights. Rights-based content markets and services give consumers enhanced diversity, quality, and choice. Public policy must ensure that markets work at peak efficiency, which is when they are open, competitive, and licensing-based. Freedom to choose. Authors must be empowered to choose how to publish and with whom. Public policy must step back as authors, publishers, and their readers choose how to connect. Access for all. Publishers want their works to be universally accessible. Public policy must encourage this through collaborative and market-driven solutions. I'll just list the number of submissions that we've been working on in the last 6 months whenever there's a threat to copyright in these countries. Australia, Bangladesh, Canada, Georgia, Hungary, Kenya, Mozambique, New Zealand, Nigeria, South Africa, and Uruguay. We're now looking at a submission to go through to the copyright debate happening in Singapore. There's the Marrakesh Treaty that's just come into force, and we're dealing with that and sending information to our members about that. Japan next year will have a major copyright review, and of course the infamous Delhi University case, which has just come down and threatens to pull the rug out from copyright around the world. And finally, the education exceptions in WIPO. I won't take up more of your time, but please come to see me if you're interested and if you want to know more about the IPA. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we're going to start here the final session, and thanks a lot. I do want to say that if you do get a chance and you do plan to go to the London Book Fair, the What Works session is very, very interesting, a full day, and I've gone there several times and it's well worth it. And also the SIIA has a number of interesting conferences, one coming up in December on the business of education, so looking at investment and the like. So if those are areas of interest, see each of these individuals. Today, this is really a call to action. It's important, not just a closing session, but hopefully you're going to leave here with some sense of where you should be going in your role as an educator, whether that's in school, in university, or in the medical area. I think we have a number of good thinkers up here who are going to challenge us to really think differently about the nature of education. We're going to hear 8 different perspectives, and each one is critical to create lasting change and innovation related to our environment, the community, your community, and providing, supporting that kind of learning. Each speaker is going to speak for 5 minutes. You all heard that? Okay. They're going to speak for 5 minutes each, and then we'll discuss the implications of what they share. We're going to have 4 speakers, then we'll discuss, and 4 speakers, and then discuss again. You should have received some paper to be able to submit questions that you have. That way you don't have to stand up and talk to the full room. And you can see Inga has the papers up there if you would like to. And then you can just wave it, and somebody will come by and take it from you and bring it to me. So do make sure you write down those questions as we're going. And we'll be using a light up here to indicate people's timing so that hopefully we'll give as much time to the discussion as possible and yet let people share their perspectives. As an introduction to this, I do want to say, however, that this really is about creating lasting change. It's not about really creating lasting change, it's about creating change that will last. And what I mean by that is that it's not about finding the next place where we're going to be comfortable. It's about creating a climate where change is normal and change occurs on an ongoing basis. We've gone through periods of time where change has been sporadic, and then we settle into a place of being comfortable. And having been a classroom teacher myself, I understand how that draws you in. You want that kind of stability. And yet we see that children are changing all the time, learners of all sorts, university, as well as at middle school. The demands of our professions are shifting, and also the expectations of all learners. People ultimately work in their own self-interest. I know that sounds horrible, but it is the case, and that's whether people are voting, putting their money where their mouth is, what they're doing. They do, one would hope, operate in their own best interest. And as we do that, we really can't look at creating consensus. We're never going to get total agreement. And what we need to do is embrace the tension that exists between all those individuals that are involved in our educational system, whether that's people in government, educators, learners, parents, the community, the medical school. All of those pieces contribute to that tension, and that tension is healthy. Some people believe we should resolve that tension, and I happen to believe that as part of creating long-term change, it's about negotiating that tension and the dynamics between those. We need to manage a system that evolves through that dynamic tension, that evolves over time. So if you look at, for example, in this conference center, if you look at the dome that was above our heads, there's no tension that's been resolved. Everything is in constant tension, and it's that holds that dome up. And just like our educational system, it's that tension that will hold it and make it balanced and create good education. This conference is supposedly about e-learning. I know that's in the title, and yet it really isn't. It really is about changing the way learning integrates new tools and the way we change what learning means and how we learn, and the kinds of tools that we use to support that. And it happens to be that e-learning and the tools that go with that are rather compelling. And that's what we're going to be discussing today, is looking at new ways of analyzing what is learning, how do we learn, how do we use these tools, what's needed in the future, and the role that all of you here will play in continuing to evolve the nature of learning. So at the end of this, we're going to really be asking all of you how you're planning to make change in your profession over the period of the next year, because we plan to have the conference again, and would look forward to you being up here and not me. So let me go ahead and turn this over to our first speaker, who needs to run for an aircraft. So he may be yelling, talking as he heads out the door. And this is Piotr Budzki, who will be talking about defining the learner.
Hello. I'll be brief, not only because I have 5 minutes, but also because I really have a plane to catch. Honestly, demographics do not work now when we define our users, our students, the people we work with. What works is discovering the mindset of another person and being truly, truly empathetic. And that sounds rich, but it is not that easy. That is why for me it's very important to first define the 3 curses that we all suffer from before we learn how to define the users, the people that we interact with. And I'm going to start with the first curse that I suffer from. It's the curse of knowledge. Knowing everything makes it impossible for you to imagine what the other person does not know and how it feels not to know what you know. And therefore, when I start defining my students or the users or the clients in any sort of human interaction situation, I start by learning what they don't know and trying to put myself in their shoes. Because otherwise it's impossible. So I start defining not by what I know about the world, but what they might possibly not know, and I never ever judge. So that is the first thing. But also, there is another thing. We as humans are bewildered and enchanted by the environment we are surrounded with very often. The same goes for the tools, like e-learning tools or new technologies or social media. And that makes us suffer from yet another curse that I like to call the curse of marketing. By the way, the curse of knowledge was, I believe, first referred to by Steven Pinker in his book. The curse of marketing, I sort of first refer to it. Not that I particularly don't like marketing people. I am a marketing person. But with marketing, we are always, especially when it comes to new technologies, we are so hopeful that the new tools will solve the things. So I start defining my user by how bewildered by new tools they are. But I also like to look in depth into what they find attractive in that tool and then manipulate around that. And I dare say I'm not afraid of using the word manipulate because it's a game. It's a game of human interaction. And if I want to really interact, first I need to understand how it feels not to know what I know, and then I need to know what they find so attractive about Twitter, Snapchat, and other tools that they're using on a daily basis, and then try to make it work for me. And then there is another curse that is called, and I call it quite accordingly, the director's cut with all the deleted scenes, the audio commentary, and all the other scenes. It's like Lord of the Rings for 9 hours. It's too much of everything. And I suffer a lot from that, especially when I forget that the person on the other side does not know what I know and does not necessarily need to know everything in 5 minutes. So I also start defining the user by finding out how much content and how much information can they absorb. Because it's not about how much I can vomit onto them, but it's how much they can absorb. And we live in the times when people are cognitively challenged. We discussed during the break about paying attention and that teachers constantly complain about how the students are not paying attention. But the very expression is to pay attention. They pay attention to something worth paying attention for. I know it's a struggle. Yes, attention spans has dropped. Yes, every 10 minutes in a classroom you will have to do something to earn attention back. But that is a fact. You need to define your users, your students, by their cognitive capabilities and by the way, how they assess the cognitive resources to the information. So it's tough. Maybe it's tougher than it was before. I don't know. Maybe we just have this beautiful vision of the past that never existed. But the reality is that now we are cognitively challenged. Our students are too. So if we do not pay attention to everything, we need to understand why they do not pay attention to when we're talking. So these are the 3 curses that I use when I start preparing any sort of material for my students. I define what they don't know. I define what I know and how I should do it with the tools that technology offers and make it entertaining in a way. And also, I decide how I can sell the things so that they pay attention to. And I define that by finding what is interesting, unexpected. We as humans love to learn. That is the most gratifying thing that ever happened to us on Earth. Somewhere along the way, we turned educational system into something that is not so gratifying after all. Let's keep it back. Okay, thank you. And now I just want to say that I'm really sorry that I have to run because I really loved it. Thank you to all the speakers.
So that was Piotr looking at the defining who the user is. Next, we're going to be talking about teacher education, and then we'll be talking about tools, and we'll be talking about content creation. So let me call next on Christoph Glomb, who will be talking about teacher education. Actually, there's one up there. Do you want to use this?
No. Proszę Państwa, znowu będę bardzo praktyczny w tym, co chciałbym powiedzieć. Kiedy Myron powiedział mi o tym, że ta sesja ma mieć taki charakter wyzwania do działania, to pomyślałem sobie, do jakiego maksymalnego uproszczenia moglibyśmy dojść, kiedy rozmawiamy o sytuacji w szkole czy w sytuacji w edukacji. I tu bardzo pomocne stało się dla mnie moje doświadczenie już z czasów słusznie minionych, kiedy zajmowałem się teatrem. Peter Brook kiedyś ukuł takie pojęcie pustej przestrzeni. Ono miało oznaczać sytuację, w której aktor jest skonfrontowany z widzem jako jedynym punktem odniesienia. Wokół niego żadne inne elementy nie pojawiały się w tym myśleniu o tym, w jaki sposób budować prawdziwe sedno teatru. Ja myślę, że jesteśmy dzisiaj w takiej sytuacji, w której w istocie rzeczy można by pomyśleć o sytuacji, w której będziemy mieli nauczyciela, uczniów i nazwijmy to umownie internet, jako tą przestrzeń, która nie jest pusta, ale jest tym miejscem, które zagospodarowuje całkowicie otoczenie pomiędzy nauczycielem i uczniem i pozwala na rozmaite interakcje. A więc to jest fundament. Możemy tak, mówimy o tym, że szkoła powinna być odmiejscowiona, że możemy z niej wyjść, uczyć się w zupełnie nowych środowiskach, ale zawsze będzie potrzebny nam nauczyciel, uczeń i to środowisko, którym dzisiaj jest środowisko cyfrowe. Ale żeby to zadziałało, potrzebny jest nam nauczyciel, który jest w stanie, tak jak aktor na scenie, zagrać swoją rolę odpowiednio, wykorzystać tą przestrzeń, która jest mu dana. I myślę, że kluczowe dzisiaj wyzwanie, które powinniśmy przed sobą postawić, myślę tu o Polsce, ale myślę, że podobnie jest w krajach, nazwijmy to południowej Europy, nawet nie muszę tu improwizować, jest wiele badań na ten temat, pokazujących, jak jesteśmy bardzo blisko w tym zakresie Grecji, Hiszpanii, Portugalii czy Włoch. Statystycznie oczywiście. Otóż to jest kwestia kompetencji, które my nazywamy cyfrodydaktycznymi, a więc takimi, które wynikają z tradycyjnej pedagogiki, ale jednocześnie potrafią odnosić się do środowiska, którym jest dzisiaj ta przestrzeń cyfrowa, o której mówiłem. Tak więc to jest chyba wyzwanie fundamentalne dzisiaj i do tego wyzwania potrzebne nam są dziesiątki głów w Europie, dziesiątki reprezentantów różnych sektorów, różnych miejsc, które możemy sobie wyobrazić na mapie, zarówno nauki, zarówno praktyków, również firm produkujących te zręby przestrzeni cyfrowej, o których warto przecież cały czas rozmawiać. I to stanęło u źródła naszej refleksji, którą w ostatnich latach staraliśmy się rozwijać bardzo w naszym takim ośrodku, który się nazywa Fabryka Przyszłości. W tym ośrodku staraliśmy się właśnie połączyć te kompetencje nauczyciela cyfrowe z jego kompetencjami pedagogicznymi i ukuliśmy dlatego specjalną metodę działania. Mam tu nawet prezentację, która w jakichś szczegółach wchodzi w te zagadnienia, ale myślę, że to nie jest najważniejsze. To jest metoda, która myślę kilka kroków wykracza poza dotychczasowe doświadczenie edukacyjne nauczycieli w zakresie skorzystania z tak zwanego TIK-ów w edukacji. Bardzo namawiam wszystkich, również tutaj siedzących tutaj na scenie, do zwrócenia większej uwagi na ten element w działaniach, które podejmujemy na co dzień. No i jeśli jest jakieś wyzwanie do działania, no to chciałbym właśnie powiedzieć, spróbujmy pójść w tym kierunku, bo nikt za nas tego nie zrobi. Dziękuję.
Again, remember, we're going to be talking about the dynamic relationship between these different components and how important it is that if we're going to try to create a sustainable shift, that we need to affect all of them at the same time. We can't do just one at a time. So let me call next on Artur Diro to talk to us about tools.
Thank you, Michael. My wife says that I'm psychopathic control freak, so I try to order everything. Sometimes I do it even in my friend's house, in the washing machine. I put the dishes in the right order. So you may imagine how uncomfortable I feel being in the eLearning industry. To me, this is one of the most disorganized industry I know. Before I explain why, I'll give you another example. Look at the social network, naming Facebook. You use it for your hobbies, for your family contacts, for your professional sometimes as well. You have one place to go. Look at your music software. So you have one application that serves you with the classical, jazz, or pop music. You do not go to different apps to listen to that. But then look at the teacher. Teacher have a textbook, or students maybe better. Students having a textbook from publisher A, B, and C. And all those publishers usually propose their own platforms, their own LMSs, their own way of delivering the content. So if they learn history, they go to the history website. If they learn geography, they go to the geography website, and so on. So look at the teacher who is using thousands of different apps, small applications that has to be put in one coherent environment with the hands of teacher in order to make a logical process. Look at the publishing industry or e-publishing industry. Is there anything like a standard there? Every single publisher, not even publisher, every single department in the publishing house develops interactive content in their own way. They have a good friends there, subcontractors, local in India or wherever they have them. And they all developing content in their own way. You may claim that there are some standards like SCORM, XAPI, but that's the lie. I mean, these are just covers, and what is inside is totally disorganized. So I believe that we have a lot to do in order to try to make it really coherent. I don't know the recipe for that. Somehow, what I noticed so far, that the big giants like Google, Microsoft, or Apple failed. They tried to make some initiatives, but first of all, they used to act globally, while education is very local, very tied to the cultural and language, and they somehow cannot find a way to break through educational system in every single country. So we cannot probably count on these big giants to solve our problem. So then, who is left? Alan probably will describe us thousands of different startups creating a very smart and intelligent application solving individual issues and problems. How to put them together? Maybe an API is an answer, maybe not, I don't know. I'm still waiting for the, let's say, moment when we have a coherent environment, when we can work comfortably as a teacher, as a student, as a parent as well, which will serve all our educational needs. And essentially, we are looking for something like Google, Facebook in education, and I hope it may happen. My professional life is all about struggling to deliver such a thing, which obviously is still long ahead us. So I believe that if this is a call to action, I would say, let's tidy up. Yeah? So let's make an order in the industry. Let's try to help publishers, teachers, students to work on a really comfortable situation, have a one format like MP3 for music. We don't think if we send a file or we want to publish a music, we don't think what kind of format I have to use because they probably use different thing. If I send today, or if the publisher tries to license electronic content to other publishers, they are sending files, then the publisher is hiring the software developer. Software developer looks at the software code and says, this is all rubbish. We have to write it from scratch. And this is quite a typical situation which is happening, which makes also e-content publishing very expensive. Because there is no common tools, there is no common standards, there is no the way that publishers, developers, editorial teams can exchange files and experience among them. It happened already in the printed world. Essentially, we have one application which is used to lay out the books. Do we have one application to lay out electronic content, to develop electronic content? Probably not. So I'd love to see it. I struggle to do it, and I hope that we can also fight for that. A little bit more order in the e-learning industry. Thank you.
Perfect. I have a wealth of mics. Thank you so much, Artur, and I think that was a nice challenge. I think the question's easier than the answer, yes? Yeah. So next let me call, so that was talking about tools in education. Let me call next on Jose Borguinho, who is from the International Publishers Association and from the Educational Publishers Forum, which is part of the IPA, talking about content creation. Oh, you brought your own mic, okay. No, it's fine.
Looked like maracas.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm the policy dude in this group. I've spent the majority of my adult life walking into the offices of politicians and trying to convince them of something. It's not a pretty job, especially when you're talking about publishing. Usually I walk into a politician's office and I talk about publishing and they think I'm talking about printing. Forget about the e-revolution, they still think of the printer. We also did in Australia a survey of what politicians and other decision makers think of education publishers, and I'm sorry to say that they think of you in the same way as they think of people who deliver chairs and tables to a school. If a chair breaks, you call someone up and ask for another one, and they think of publishers in the same way. The last anecdote is about Easter Island and trees. There used to be a lot of trees on Easter Island, then they started cutting them down and now there aren't any. There used to be a lot of fish around Mauritius and they found a really easy way of fishing. They go out in a boat and throw a stick of dynamite in the water. But now there are no coral reefs around Mauritius except for a couple of places and the fish are gone. I'll come back to all of these anecdotes. Despite the best efforts of some free-tard zealots, as I like to call them, information is just an abstract noun. It does not want to be free. It does not want anything. It either sits around ignored by billions of people or it becomes the latest viral meme shared by all. But whatever its consumption status, the one thing that each bit of information has in common with every other bit of information is that they're all created by human beings. And unlike information, humans are not abstract. We are concrete and even proper nouns. Humans eat, drink, have bills to pay. Some of us have children to put through school, dogs to walk and bikes to pedal. We are consumers as well as producers, users as well as creators. And every day that a creator or a rights holder doesn't get paid for the use of their work is a bad day. Everyone should get paid for their work, whether it's arguing a legal case, stacking a library shelf, or giving an NGO political advice. I believe this is true for authors, creators, and for those who publish their works. Copyright is the basis of a complex and delicate ecosystem, not a license to print money. The threats to copyright, from pirates and thieves, from free riders wanting ever more exceptions to copyright law, from deluded governments believing that they can produce high-quality education textbooks, are quickly spoiling that ecosystem. Authors entertain us, they educate us, and they are society's moral conscience. They are the way we tell ourselves who we are, what we've done, and what we could be. They chronicle, inspire, and admonish us. As the American literary journalist Joan Didion once said, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. And those stories, in the widest possible sense of all, our literary, visual, and musical narratives, are not just an optional adjunct to our lives, they are what sets us apart. Copyright is the mechanism our society has invented for ensuring that authors are rewarded for their creativity and are encouraged to continue creating. In an increasingly globalised, digitised and mediated world, authors are the people who create an intelligible conversation out of the anarchy, dissonance and babble. And publishers are the engine that drives that conversation, ensuring that it reaches its maximum audience. People talk about the knowledge economy or the ideas economy of the future. Well, the future is now. Today's authors are the creators of the ideas that will inspire our future dreams. And publishers are the people who make those ethereal, evanescent ideas tangible and real. Copyright is not a religion, it's just a tool, a way of monetising an author's investment of time and a publisher's risk capital. It may not be perfect, but it's the best we have. In the future, what I want to see is a global education publishing sector that is recognised by governments and others and as an important stakeholder in the education of our children and all of us in a lifelong learning environment. I want the general public to acknowledge an education publisher's expertise and skills in translating abstract theoretical curriculum statements into practical teacher and student-friendly resources. I want those resources to be judged on their merit by the best arbiters possible, teachers and students in the classroom, not apparatchiks and promoters of technology for its own sake in the finance ministry or in California. And finally, I want to see libraries and authors being taken seriously by governments so that they do not have to scramble to survive and attack publishers in desperation, asking for ever broader exceptions to copyright in a self-defeating vicious cycle that will end up destroying the publishing ecosystem that actually sustains them. Thank you.